The keys hit the kitchen counter with a metallic clatter that still echoes in my nightmares. Thanks, sis, Maya said, her perfectly manicured fingers closing around my car keys like a Venus flytrap. You're such a lifesaver. I promise we'll take good care of it. I watched her smile, that same smile I'd seen in another lifetime, right before everything fell apart. My hands wanted to snatch those keys back, to scream at her that I knew exactly what she was planning. But instead, I smiled back and said nothing. Because this time, I had my own car waiting in a private garage across town. A car they didn't know about. A car purchased with money from an account they couldn't touch. This time, everything would be different. Maya twirled the keys around her finger, her diamond bracelet, bought with Dad's credit card, the one he never let me use, catching the afternoon light. We're gonna have the best time on the coast. Instagram is going to explode. I'm sure it will, I said softly, remembering how in my previous life my car had exploded instead. Literally. Brake lines cut, accelerator tampered with, all disguised as my own reckless maintenance. The accident report had been very clear about that. Driver negligence, case closed. I died at 23 wrapped around a highway barrier while Maya posted pictures from my funeral with the caption, remembering my sweet sister and 10 sad face emojis. She'd gotten 80,000 likes. She'd also gotten my inheritance. But that was the old timeline, the one where I'd been naive, trusting, and ultimately dead. When I opened my eyes 3 years in the past on my 20th birthday, I'd been given the rarest gift imaginable. Foreknowledge. A chance to rewrite my own ending. Nora, honey, make sure you help your sister Puck, Mom called from the living room, not even looking up from her phone. She never looked up from her phone. Not when I'd made honor roll, not when I'd won the state writing competition, and certainly not when I'd tried to tell her that Maya was stealing from me. Maya's car is in the shop, and you know how important this trip is for her, Mom continued. She's finally getting some influencer sponsorships. Real opportunities, not like your, what do you call it? Freelance typing. Freelance typing. That's what my mother called my work as a published author and content strategist. In my first life, I'd let that diminishment crush me. I'd actually believed I was less important than Maya's manufactured Instagram persona. Of course, Mom, I said, keeping my voice neutral, and I'm happy to help. Maya was already halfway up the stairs, probably to raid my closet for borrowing clothes she'd never return. I'd learned in my previous life that she'd taken over $6,000 worth of my belongings over the years. I knew the exact amount because I'd itemized everything in therapy, back when I'd still thought talking about my feelings might somehow fix my family. It hadn't. What had fixed things, or rather, what would fix things, was the manila envelope hidden in my bedroom safe. Inside were copies of every transaction, every forged signature, every piece of evidence documenting how Maya and our mother had systematically drained my trust fund. The trust fund my grandmother had left me, the one I wasn't supposed to touch until I turned 25, but that they'd been managing for me since I was 18. In my previous life, I'd discovered the theft at 22, confronted them, and been gaslit so thoroughly I'd questioned my own sanity. They'd had 5 years to cover their tracks, to create a paper trail that made me look like the irresponsible one. By the time I'd hired a lawyer, there was nothing left to recover. This time, I'd discovered it at 20, immediately after my rebirth. I'd gone straight to the bank, removed both of them as authorized users, and transferred everything to a new account they couldn't access. Then I'd started documenting. Screenshots, bank statements, recorded conversations. 3 years of meticulous evidence gathering. The car I was lending Maya had been purchased with my first paycheck from a retail job, back when I'd been stupid enough to think shared assets meant shared family love. In reality, it had meant I'd paid for the car while Maya had paid for nothing, not even gas. The car I'd bought last month, a sleek black sedan with every safety feature known to man, had been purchased with money from my secret freelance accounts, the ones I'd set up under a business name my family didn't know about, my pen name, the name that had published 3 best-selling novels in the past 2 years. Yes, novels, plural. Because the first thing I'd done after being reborn was write down every plot, every character, every story idea I'd developed in my previous life. Then I'd publish them. All of them. The books that had taken me until age 28 to write in my first timeline, I'd completed by age 22 in this one. Turns out, having already lived through your creative process once makes it remarkably efficient the second time around. My first novel had hit the bestseller list within 3 months. My mother had been in the room when I'd gotten the call from my agent. She'd barely glanced up from coaching Maya on her authentic Instagram aesthetic. "Mom," Maya's voice drifted down the stairs, syrupy sweet. "Can you help me choose between the blue bikini and the red one? I need to make sure everything is perfect for the beach photos." I walked to my room and locked the door. From my closet, I pulled out a small suitcase I'd packed 3 days ago. Inside were clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and most importantly, my external hard drive containing backups of all my work and evidence. Because while Maya was taking my old car on her road trip, I was taking my new car on my own journey to my father's house. Not the father who lived in this house, the one who'd remarried my mother 15 years ago and treated me like an inconvenient reminder of his first marriage. No, I was going to visit my real father, my biological father, who'd been written out of my life by a mother who'd told me he'd abandoned us. That had been a lie, one of many. In my previous life, I discovered the truth at 24, 1 year before I died. My father, my real father, had fought for custody. He'd sent letters, birthday cards, and child support payments that my mother had intercepted and hidden. He'd never abandoned me. He'd been systematically erased from my life by a woman who'd wanted to punish him for their failed relationship. When I'd finally found him, broken and apologetic at 24, we'd had less than a year together before my death. He'd been the one to push for a real investigation into my accident, the one who'd known something was wrong. But by then, the evidence had been destroyed, and he'd been dismissed as a grieving parent in denial. This time, I'd found him at 20. We'd been rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully, over the past 3 years. He didn't know about the rebirth. How could I explain that? But he knew about the theft, about Maya's cruelty, about everything. And he'd been quietly helping me build my case. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Package delivered. They took the bait. I smiled. The package was a tracker I'd had a private investigator install in my old car last week. Not just any tracker, a comprehensive system that monitored location, speed, and even recorded audio from inside the vehicle. Completely legal since it was my car and I had every right to monitor my own property. I texted back. Confirmed. Proceeding with phase 2. A knock on my door made me jump. Nora, it was my stepfather, David, the man who'd made it clear from day one that I was a tolerated guest in his house, despite the fact that I paid rent. Rent that I'd discovered in my previous life went straight into Maya's investment account. Yes? Your sister needs to borrow your laptop. Hers is dying and she needs to edit photos on the road. Of course she did. In my previous life, Maya had borrowed my laptop and returned it infected with malware that had destroyed 3 months of work. She'd claimed ignorance, and I'd believed her. Sorry, I said through the door. I need it for work. I have deadlines. Nora. His voice dropped into that patronizing tone I'd learned to hate. This is important. Maya's career depends on having good content. So does mine, I said. I have a manuscript due. Silence, then more sharply. We'll discuss your attitude when you get home. My attitude, as if having boundaries was the same as having a bad attitude. I waited until his footsteps faded, then texted my father. Leaving in 30 minutes. See you tonight. His response was immediate. Drive safe, sweetheart. Your room is ready. Your room, not the guest room, not the spare room. Your room. I'd cried the first time he'd said that. Through my window, I watched Maya load my car with designer luggage I knew she'd charged to my old credit card, the one I'd canceled 2 years ago, but that she somehow kept using through my mother's accounts. Every purchase documented. Every fraudulent charge screenshotted and filed away. She was meeting friends in 30 minutes. 3 other influencers, all of them with larger followings, all of them ready to use my car for a week-long coastal road trip that would be documented across every social media platform imaginable. What they didn't know was that the car had a few problems. Not dangerous ones. I wasn't a killer, despite what they tried to make me, but inconvenient ones. The air conditioning would cut out randomly. The radio would stick on static-filled stations. And most importantly, the trunk lock was faulty and would pop open at the most inopportune moments. Like, say, when Maya had loaded it with borrowed items from local boutiques that she planned to photograph and return. Items she'd claim as PR gifts, but that still had security tags hidden under carefully arranged clothing. I'd seen her do it in my previous life. I'd even confronted her about it, and she'd convinced me I was being paranoid, that everyone did it, that it was just part of the influencer lifestyle. This time, I'd anonymously tipped off the security departments of every store she'd hit. They were watching, waiting, with security footage time-stamped and ready. My phone buzzed again. My literary agent, Rebecca. Got your revised manuscript. It's brilliant. Publisher wants to move up the release date and increase the print run. They're talking 6 figures for marketing. Call me. 6 figures for marketing alone. I looked around my childhood bedroom, the smallest room in the house, the one that didn't have an attached bathroom, the one that still had my twin bed from elementary school, because you don't need anything bigger since you're so small. In 3 hours, I'd be in my father's house. The house he'd bought 5 years ago with a bedroom suite that he'd decorated specifically for me, hoping I'd find him. The house with the writing studio he'd prepared, just in case. The house I'd only discovered in my previous life when it was too late. Nora! Maya's voice, sharp and impatient. Come say goodbye. And I need gas money. Gas money. For a trip I wasn't taking, in a car I'd paid for, using gas she expected me to finance. I grabbed my purse and headed downstairs. In the kitchen, Maya had her hand out, expectant. Mom stood beside her, arms crossed. 50 should cover it, Maya said. I pulled out my wallet slowly, making a show of checking my cash. I only have 20. Seriously? Maya's perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together. After I'm doing you this huge favor by not making you drive us? The audacity was almost impressive. No one asked me to drive you, I said, calmly. You asked to borrow my car. Same difference, Mom interjected. Don't be petty, Nora. You know Maya would do the same for you. Maya wouldn't give me water if I was on fire, but I didn't say that. Instead, I handed over the 20. Have fun. Drive safe. Maya snatched the bill. Whatever, we're late. She grabbed the last of her bags and headed out, Mom following to wave goodbye and take pictures for social media. I stood at the window and watched my old car pull out of the driveway, watched it turn the corner and disappear. Then I went upstairs, grabbed my suitcase, and left through the back door. My new car was waiting exactly where I'd left it, in a private garage I rented under my business name 3 blocks away. Black, sleek, and paid for entirely in cash. No loans, no co-signers, no way for my family to ever claim any part of it. I loaded my suitcase, settled into the leather seats, and started the engine. The dashboard lit up with all its modern features. The backup camera, the blind spot monitoring, the collision detection, every safety feature I'd missed having in my previous life. As I pulled out of the garage, my phone rang. Rebecca. Hey, I answered, voice steady despite the adrenaline. Got your message. Nora, I don't know how you do it, but this latest manuscript is your best work yet. The publisher wants to discuss a 3-book deal with a significant advance. Can you meet next week? I'll be in the city, I said. My father's place. Send me the details. We talked logistics for 20 minutes while I navigated out of my mother's neighborhood. By the time I hung up, I was on the highway, heading north, leaving behind the house where I'd been made to feel small for 23 years. My phone buzzed with a notification. Maya had posted a photo. 4 girls piled into my old car, caption reading, road trip with my besties in my baby sister's car. So grateful she lets me borrow it. #sister love, #blessed, #road trip vibes. The comments were already rolling in. You're so lucky to have such a generous sister. Ah, family goals. She must love you so much. I laughed, actually laughed, because 3 days from now, that car would break down in a small coastal town. Nothing dangerous, just a perfectly timed failure of a component I'd had adjusted by my mechanic. A component that would require a specific part that would take days to arrive. Days that Maya and her friends would spend stranded in a town with expensive hotels and no good photo opportunities. Days where they'd burn through money they didn't have, maxing out credit cards and calling home for help that wouldn't come, because I'd already warned the bank about potential fraud on my mother's cards. But that was just the beginning. The real show would start when they finally got the car to a mechanic who'd discover all those borrowed boutique items in the trunk during the repair. Items that, thanks to my anonymous tips, were flagged as stolen. Items that security footage would show Maya taking without paying. I'd timed everything perfectly. The mechanic I'd randomly recommended was in a town with a very strict sheriff who took theft seriously. Very seriously. My phone rang. My father. "Hey, sweetheart, how's the drive?" "Good," I said, and meant it. "I should be there in about 4 hours." "I made your favorite for dinner, lasagna." My eyes stung. "You remembered." Of course I remembered. I remember everything about you, Nora. Every birthday I missed, every school play, every story you used to write. Your mother sent me some of your old journals by accident once, years ago when she was clearing out storage. I kept them all. In my previous life, I'd never known that. I'd died thinking he'd never cared. "Dad," I said, voice thick. "Thank you for everything. You're my daughter. You don't thank family for loving you." Except I'd spent my whole life in a family where love was transactional, where every gift came with strings, where affection was a weapon used to control and manipulate. We talked until my phone battery started dying. I pulled over at a rest stop, plugged in my charger, and checked my email. 7 new messages. 3 from potential clients wanting to hire me for consulting work. 2 from my publisher's marketing department with preliminary cover designs. 1 from my lawyer, confirming that all documents were filed and ready for the next phase. And 1 from an unknown sender with the subject line, "You don't know what you're doing." I opened it. "Dear Nora, I know you think you're clever, cutting us off from your accounts and hiding money, but you're making a huge mistake. Family is everything, and you're throwing it away over nothing. Maya loves you. Mom loves you. We all love you. Come home and stop this nonsense before you do something you'll regret. If you don't, you'll force us to take action. Legal action. You're not well, Nora. Everyone can see that. Your paranoia, your delusions about money being stolen. We have doctors who will testify to your mental instability. We have records of your erratic behavior. Think very carefully about what you're doing. Love, Mom." I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer with a note. "Add to evidence file. Attempting to threaten with false mental health claims. This will support our case for financial elder abuse and fraud." Because that's exactly what it was. Evidence. Evidence that they knew I was onto them and were panicking. Evidence that they would go so far as to try to have me declared mentally incompetent to regain control of my money. In my previous life, they'd succeeded. I'd been so broken down, so convinced I was crazy, that when they'd suggested therapy, I'd gone willingly. And the therapist, their therapist, it turned out, a friend of my mother's, had been more than happy to document my paranoid delusions and persecution complex. By the time I'd realized what was happening, my mother had power of attorney, Maya had been named my caretaker, and I'd lost access to everything. This time, I had my own therapist. One I'd found independently, one who'd been documenting the actual abuse for 3 years, one whose records would stand up in court. I texted my lawyer. They took the bait, threatening mental health claims, proceed with filing. Her response was immediate. "On it. Court date is set for 3 weeks from now. They're about to be very surprised." I pulled back onto the highway, following the GPS toward my father's house, toward home. The landscape changed as I drove north, from the manicured suburbs where my mother played at being society's darling to rolling hills and actual trees. My father lived in a small city, the kind of place where people knew their neighbors and didn't perform their lives for social media, the kind of place where I could breathe. My phone buzzed every few minutes with updates from the tracker in my old car. Maya was making good time, probably speeding, definitely playing music too loud. Her friends were posting constant updates, every rest stop, every scenic viewpoint, every bathroom selfie. The internet was eating it up. What the internet didn't know was that every single post was documenting their location, their timeline, and most importantly, their possession of stolen merchandise. The private investigator I'd hired was following at a discreet distance, taking his own photos and notes. Everything was going exactly according to plan. 4 hours later, I pulled into my father's driveway. The house was a beautiful craftsman-style home with a wraparound porch and actual flowers in the garden. Not the designer landscaping my mother preferred, but real flowers that someone actually watered and cared for. The front door opened before I could even turn off the engine. My father stood there, older than I remembered from my previous life, but somehow younger too, less burdened. He was smiling. I got out of the car and he pulled me into a hug that nearly crushed my ribs. "Welcome home, sweetheart." I let myself cry then. Big, ugly, relieved tears that I'd been holding back for 3 lifetimes. That night, over lasagna that tasted exactly like I remembered, I told my father everything. Well, almost everything. I couldn't tell him about the rebirth, about living this all before, but I told him about the plan, about the evidence, about Maya's trip, and what was about to unfold. He listened, his face growing darker with every detail. "I should have fought harder," he said finally. "I should have kept fighting even when the court said no." "You did fight," I said. "She lied. She told me you gave up, but you didn't." "I found the court records, Dad. I know you tried." "I should have tried harder." "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters." We spent the evening going over documents, preparing for the court date, making sure every piece of evidence was airtight. My father had hired his own lawyer, a pit bull of a woman named Sarah Chen who specialized in financial fraud and family law. "They're going to argue you're unstable," Sarah said, spreading papers across the dining room table. "Based on this email, they're already setting up that defense. But we have 3 years of documented therapy sessions that prove otherwise. We have bank records, screenshots, recorded conversations, all legally obtained. We have testimony from your publisher, your agent, and multiple clients about your professional competence." "What about Maya's trip?" I asked. "The stolen merchandise?" Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "That's actually perfect timing. Nothing says unstable and paranoid quite like your accusations being proven correct in real time. When she gets arrested, and she will get arrested, it corroborates everything you've been saying about her character." "I'm not trying to get her arrested," I said quietly. I'm trying to get free." "Sometimes," Sarah said, "those are the same thing." I spent the next 2 days in my father's house working on my manuscript and trying not to obsessively check the tracker. Maya was making good progress down the coast, posting enthusiastically, her friends generating thousands of likes and comments. On the 3rd day, everything changed. I was in my father's home office, my office now, really, when my phone exploded with notifications. Not from the tracker, but from social media. Maya's latest post: "Stranded, but making the best of it. Car troubles in the cutest little beach town. At least the views are amazing. Had unplanned adventure # road trip problems." The photo showed my old car with its hood up. Maya and her friends posed artfully in front of it, making exaggerated sad faces. Already it had 15,000 likes. The comments were sympathetic. "Oh no, that's so scary. At least you're all safe. Your sister's car broke down? That sucks." What none of them knew was that the mechanic looking at the car was the one I'd arranged, the one who would find the stolen merchandise, the one who was at this very moment calling the local police. I set down my phone and waited. 20 minutes later, my phone rang, unknown number. "Hello? Is this Nora?" A man's voice, professional but warm. "Yes? This is Sheriff Tom Bradford from Cypress Cove. I'm calling about your vehicle, ma'am. We have it at Sal's garage, and we need to ask you some questions." I put on my best confused voice. "My vehicle? I'm sorry, I don't understand. I'm not in Cypress Cove." "Are you the owner of a 2019 Honda Accord license plate?" He rattled off the number. "Yes, that's my car, but I lent it to my sister for a trip. Is something wrong? Is she okay?" "Your sister is fine, ma'am, but we found some items in your vehicle that are raising concerns. Items that appear to be stolen from several retail establishments. We verified with security footage from stores in your area." I let silence stretch. "I'm sorry, what? Stolen items?" "Sheriff, I don't understand." I've been out of town for days. My sister asked to borrow my car and I said yes. I have no idea what she put in it. Can you verify your whereabouts for the past 72 hours? I've been at my father's house. He can confirm that, and I have receipts from gas stations and restaurants along the way. Sheriff, I swear I had no idea about any stolen items. Is my sister in trouble? We're going to need to speak with her, yes, ma'am. And I'm afraid we'll need to keep your vehicle as evidence for now. Of course, I said. Whatever you need. Should I drive down there? I can leave right now. That won't be necessary. We have your contact information. We'll be in touch. After he hung up, I sat very still. Then I called my lawyer. It's happening, I said. Good, Sarah replied. Let it play out. Don't contact anyone in your family. Don't respond to any messages from them. Let them panic. They did panic. Within an hour, my phone was flooded with calls and texts. From my mother, call me now. From David, what did you do? From Maya, you bitch, this is your fault. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I forwarded every message to Sarah. That evening, the story broke on local news. Influencer arrested in multi-store theft ring. The footage showed Maya in handcuffs, crying dramatically, her friends standing in the background looking horrified. The internet went insane. Comments flooded in, but this time they weren't sympathetic. She was so fake the whole time. I knew something was off about her. Poor sister, lending her car, and this is what happens. She literally framed her own sister. Actually, Maya had framed herself. I'd just provided the opportunity. My phone rang. My father. You okay? Yeah, I said, I'm okay. Your mother has called me 6 times. I haven't answered. Good, let Sarah handle everything. She's already released a statement, he said. On your behalf. It's beautiful, professional, concerned, and completely throws them under the bus without saying a single accusatory word. I pulled up Sarah's statement on my laptop. Ms. Nora Chen is devastated to learn that her generosity has been exploited in this manner. She had no knowledge of any illegal activities and has fully cooperated with law enforcement. Ms. Chen is a successful author and businesswoman who has always conducted herself with integrity. She is currently considering her legal options regarding the damage to her personal property and reputation. It was perfect, sympathetic, professional, and subtly implying that I was the victim here, which I was. The next 72 hours were a blur of phone calls with lawyers, statements to police, and carefully worded social media posts from my professional accounts. I didn't engage with the drama. I didn't defend myself. I just presented facts. I was a published author. I had loaned my car in. Good faith, I had no knowledge of any criminal activity. The internet did the rest. Investigators started digging into Maya's other PR gifts and discovered she'd been running a sophisticated retail fraud operation for years. Borrowing items, photographing them, returning them to different store locations, then claiming the returns as restocking fees while pocketing the difference. Sometimes she'd even sell the items online as gently used. Every single transaction was documented. Every single piece of evidence I'd been collecting for 3 years was now in the hands of prosecutors who were very, very interested. And then they started looking at my mother. Because how does a 19-year-old with no credit history and no real income maintain such an expensive lifestyle? Where did the money come from? The answer, of course, was from my trust fund, the one my mother had been systematically draining for years. Sarah filed our lawsuit exactly 1 week after Maya's arrest, civil court seeking full recovery of stolen funds plus damages. The filing was a matter of public record, and within hours, journalists were calling. I didn't speak to them, Sarah did. Ms. Chen has been the victim of financial abuse by her family for years, Sarah told reporters. We have extensive documentation of fraudulent transactions, forged signatures, and systematic theft. She is seeking justice through the legal system. The story exploded. Influencer's sister reveals years of financial abuse. Viral thief stole from more than just stores. Family drama, when trust funds become theft funds. My mother tried to control the narrative, posting tearful videos about being betrayed by a mentally ill daughter and how families should resolve problems privately. Sarah shut that down immediately with medical records from my actual therapist, professional evaluations, and testimony from my publisher about my competence and success. The court of public opinion turned viciously against them. Every old photo of Maya wearing expensive clothes was scrutinized. Every post about her generous family was dissected. People found my author profile online and realized I was actually successful, much more successful than Maya had ever been. The narrative shifted from troubled young woman makes accusations to successful author escapes abusive family, which was closer to the truth than anyone realized. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks after Maya's arrest. I drove back to my hometown for the first time since I'd left, my father beside me, Sarah in the back seat reviewing her notes. The courthouse was small but packed. Apparently, this had become the local drama of the season. I walked in wearing a simple navy dress and minimal makeup, professional, composed. Everything Maya wasn't. My mother and David sat on the opposite side of the courtroom. Mom looked older, harder. David looked angry. Maya wasn't there. She was still dealing with her criminal charges. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and zero patience for bullshit. Perfect. Sarah presented our case methodically, bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals, copies of my grandmother's trust documents, recordings of conversations where my mother admitted to managing my money, testimony from bank employees about suspicious activity, and then the coup de grace, the email my mother had sent threatening to have me declared mentally incompetent. Your Honor, Sarah said, this email demonstrates consciousness of guilt. Ms. Chen's mother knew that her daughter was onto the theft and immediately tried to discredit her by claiming mental instability. This is a classic abuse tactic. My mother's lawyer, a nervous man who kept adjusting his glasses, tried to argue that families have misunderstandings, that this was all a big mistake, that my mother had only been trying to help me manage my finances. The judge wasn't buying it. Let me be clear, she said. The documentation here shows a pattern of financial abuse spanning multiple years, forged signatures, unauthorized transactions, and fraudulent representation. This isn't a family misunderstanding. This is theft. She ruled in my favor on every single point. Full restitution of all stolen funds, damages for emotional distress, legal fees, and a restraining order preventing my mother and David from contacting me. The amount? Just over $400,000, money they didn't have. I walked out of that courtroom with my head high. My mother tried to approach me, but courthouse security stopped her. The restraining order was effective immediately. Nora, please, she called out. We're family. I turned back just once. No, I said clearly, we're not. That night, I celebrated with my father, not with champagne or parties, but with Thai takeout and a movie on his couch. Normal, peaceful, safe. What happens now? He asked. Now, I said, they have to sell the house to pay me back. David's probably going to divorce Mom. I saw the way he looked at her in court. He had no idea how much she'd stolen. And Maya? I shrugged. Maya has her own legal problems. And you? I keep writing. I keep building my career. I keep living. Without them. Without them, I confirmed. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Just got off the phone with Netflix. They want to option your latest novel for a limited series. We're talking 7 figures. I showed the text to my father. He laughed. Your mother must be losing her mind. Probably, I said. But that's not my problem anymore. The next few months were surreal. Maya pleaded guilty to her theft charges and got probation, plus community service, first-time offender, tearful apology to the court, the whole performance. She had to shut down all her social media accounts as part of her plea deal. My mother declared bankruptcy, the house was sold, she and David did, a divorce. Apparently, he was furious to discover that she'd been forging his signature on some of the trust fund documents, too. He claimed he'd known nothing about the theft, and honestly, I believed him. He was selfish and neglectful, but probably not a co-conspirator. He moved to Florida. I never heard from him again. My mother tried to contact me multiple times through mutual acquaintances, claiming she was sorry, claiming she'd only wanted what was best for me. The restraining order made it clear that best for me didn't include her. Maya sent one email. I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family. I deleted it without responding. Because I was happy. Genuinely, completely happy. My novel adaptation went into production. I bought a house, my own house, with my name on the deed and no one else's. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, filled it with books and art and a state-of-the-art writing setup. My father visited often. We had weekly dinners. He met my friends, real friends, people who liked me for me, not for what I could provide. I wrote 3 more books, all of them bestsellers. My agent negotiated a multi-million-dollar deal for my next series. I gave interviews about financial abuse and family trauma. I started a foundation to help young people escape toxic family situations. I funded scholarships for abuse survivors who wanted to pursue creative careers. I lived. 2 years after the court case, I was at a coffee shop working on my latest manuscript when someone approached my table. Nora? I looked up. It was Maya. She looked different. Older. Tired. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. No makeup, no perfectly styled hair. I don't want anything, she said quickly. I wanted to say I'm sorry, really sorry. I was awful to you for years, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it. I studied her. In my previous life, I studied her. In my previous life, I'd never gotten this apology. I'd died still hoping she'd realize what she'd done. Still hoping for some acknowledgement that I'd mattered. You're violating the restraining order, I said quietly. She paled. I didn't think this. That's always been your problem, Maya. You don't think. You don't think about consequences, about other people, about anything beyond what you want in the moment. You're right, her voice cracked. I know you're right. I've been in therapy, real therapy, not the bullshit mom set up for you. And I'm realizing how much I hurt you. How much we all hurt you. I closed my laptop. Why now? Why seek me out now? Because I have a daughter. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. A little girl, maybe 6 months old, with Maya's eyes. And I look at her and I think about how mom raised us, how she pitted us against each other, how she made me believe that your success was my failure, that there wasn't enough love to go around, that I had to take from you to have anything for myself. That's not an excuse. I know, I'm not making excuses. I don't want to be her. I don't want my daughter to grow up in that kind of poison. And I can't figure out how to be different unless I face what I did, unless I apologize to the person I hurt most. I should have felt satisfaction. This was everything I'd wanted. Maya broken, apologetic, finally understanding the damage she'd caused. Instead, I felt tired. I'm glad you're in therapy, I said. I'm glad you're trying to be better for your daughter. But Maya, I'm not the person who can absolve you. I'm not the one who can tell you it's okay, because it's not okay. What you did, what you all did, nearly destroyed me. It would have destroyed me if I hadn't fought back. I know. Do you? I leaned forward. Do you know that there were nights I thought about ending it? That I believed I was worthless, crazy, paranoid, everything Mom told me I was? Do you know what it's like to be gaslit by your entire family? Tears streamed down her face. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. She nodded, wiping her eyes. What can I do? Nothing, I said. There's nothing you can do, Maya. You can't give me back the years I spent doubting myself. You can't undo the trust fund you helped steal. You can't return the belongings you took, the opportunities you sabotaged, the lies you told. So that's it? We were never really sisters, I said gently. Not in any way that mattered. We shared a house and a mother, but that's all. You were Mom's accomplice and I was the mark. That's not a sisterhood. I want to make it right. Then make it right with your daughter. Be the mother to her that ours never was to us. Break the cycle. That's the only thing that matters now. Maya stood there for a long moment, tears still falling. Then she nodded slowly. Thank you for seeing me, for listening. Maya, I said as she turned to leave, that restraining order stands. I meant what I said. Don't contact me again. Not through friends, not through email, not accidentally at coffee shops. This was your one chance to say what you needed to say. Now live your life and let me live mine. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'm sorry for everything. She left. I sat there for a while staring at my blank laptop screen. Then I called my therapist and scheduled an extra session. Because here's what nobody tells you about getting revenge, about winning, about being vindicated. It doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't give you back what was taken. It just stops the bleeding. The real victory wasn't watching them fall. It was building something they couldn't touch. That night, I sat in my home office, my beautiful sunlit office with walls of books and a view of the garden I'd planted myself, and I wrote. Not about revenge, not about abuse, but about a woman who discovers she has the power to rewrite her own story. It wasn't autobiographical, not really, but it was true in all the ways that mattered. My phone rang, my father. Hey, sweetheart, just checking in. I'm good, I said. And I meant it. Movie night this weekend? Wouldn't miss it. After we hung up, I looked around my office. At the awards on my shelves, writing prizes, recognition from survivors' organizations, commendations for my charity work. At the photos of my father and me, smiling genuinely. At the framed first page of my first published novel, the one that had started everything. My email pinged. Rebecca, my agent. Publisher wants to know if you're interested in writing a memoir. They're offering an obscene amount of money. No pressure, but think about it. A memoir, the true story of financial abuse, family betrayal, and escape. I typed back Sadbeka. Let me think about it, but if I do it, I want all proceeds above my advance to go to the foundation. Victims helping victims. Her response was immediate. That's why you're my favorite client. Take your time. I pulled up a blank document and stared at it. A memoir would mean reliving everything. It would mean being vulnerable in public, exposing the worst moments of my life. But it would also mean helping others recognize the signs, showing them they weren't alone, giving them a roadmap out. I started typing. The first time my sister tried to kill me, I didn't even realize it was murder. I thought it was an accident. I stopped. Deleted it. That was the dramatic version, the sensationalized version that would sell but wouldn't help. I started again. This is a story about family, money, and the invisible ways we're taught to accept abuse. It's about a woman who had to die to learn how to live. And it's about the choice we all face when we realize the people who should protect us are the ones hurting us most. Better, true, useful. I wrote for 3 hours until my eyes burned and my hands cramped. I wrote about my mother's gaslighting, about Maya's casual cruelty, about the systematic theft that had nearly broken me. I wrote about the moment I discovered the truth, about the decision to fight back, about the long, difficult process of gathering evidence and building a case. I wrote about the court victory, but also about the emptiness that came after, about realizing that winning didn't automatically mean healing. And I wrote about my father, about finding him again, about learning what real family actually looked like. When I finally stopped, the sun was coming up. I had 20,000 words. It was rough, raw, honest. It was a beginning. 3 years later, I stood in a bookstore watching people line up for my memoir signing. The book, titled The Price of Family, had been on the bestseller list for 16 weeks. It had sparked a national conversation about financial abuse within families. Senators had quoted it, therapists recommended it, survivors sent me letters every day. The woman at the front of the line was young, maybe 19, with nervous eyes. "Thank you," she said as I signed her book. "Thank you for writing this. My mother has been stealing from my college fund and I thought I was going crazy. Your book made me realize I wasn't. I've hired a lawyer." "Good," I said, meeting her eyes. "Document everything. Trust your instincts. And know that you deserve better." She started crying. I'm so scared. I know, but you're also brave enough to be standing here. That's the hardest part, admitting it's real. The rest is just logistics. Person after person came through that line with similar stories. Stolen inheritances, forged signatures, parents who treated their children like personal ATMs, siblings who saw family as a competition to be won. I signed books until my hand ached. I listened to stories until my heart hurt. And I gave the same advice over and over: document, report, escape, heal. Because that's what I'd learned. That's what my rebirth had taught me. You can't change abusers. You can only change your relationship to them. That evening, exhausted and emotionally drained, I returned to my hotel room. My phone had dozens of messages, interview requests, fan mail, and one text from an unknown number. I read your book. I'm proud of you. M. Maya. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I deleted it without responding. Some bridges don't need to be rebuilt. The next morning, I flew home. My father picked me up at the airport, as he always did. We stopped for coffee, sat in comfortable silence, talked about his garden and my next book project. Normal, easy, safe. You doing okay? He asked as we pulled into my driveway. That signing looked intense. It was, I admitted. But good. Hard, but good. You're helping people, Nora. Real people in real ways. I'm trying. He squeezed my hand. Your grandmother would be so proud. Not just of what you've accomplished, but of who you are. My grandmother. The woman whose trust fund had been stolen, whose last wishes for me had been perverted into a weapon. I'd never known her well. She'd died when I was young. But I'd used her name for my foundation, the Evelyn Chen Foundation for Family Abuse Survivors. It felt right. It felt like honoring her in a way my mother never had. Inside my house, I kicked off my shoes and collapsed on the couch. My phone buzzed. Rebecca. Just got a call from the foundation. A major donor wants to contribute $5 million in your grandmother's name. Apparently, they read your book and it resonated. They want to fund a new shelter specifically for young people escaping financial abuse. $5 million, a shelter, in my grandmother's name. I started crying, not sad tears, not angry tears, just overwhelmed tears, because this was it. This was what my rebirth had been for, not revenge, not even justice, really, but transformation. Taking all that pain and rage and fear and turning it into something that could help others. My second life had given me the knowledge to fight back, but this helping, this building, this creating something good from something terrible, this was the real gift. I called my father back. Hey, Dad, can you come over? I want to tell you something. Of course, everything okay? Yeah, I said, looking around my home at the life I'd built, at the future I was creating. Everything's better than okay. Everything's exactly right. When he arrived, we sat in my living room and I told him about the donation, about the shelter, about how the foundation was growing beyond anything I'd imagined. We're going to help so many people, I said. Kids who think they're crazy for not trusting their parents. Young adults who don't know how to escape financial abuse. People who need to hear that it's not their fault, that they deserve better. You're remarkable, my father said quietly. I mean that. What you've done with your pain, not everyone could do that. I had help, I said. I had you. I had good therapy. I had resources and privilege that a lot of people don't have. That's why the foundation matters. Not everyone gets a second chance. A second chance. If only he knew how literal that was. That night, alone in my house, I pulled out an old journal. The one I'd started the day I woke up in my 20-year-old body with all my memories intact. The first entry read, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know if this is a gift or a curse, but I'm not wasting it. I'm going to do everything differently. I'm going to save myself. I'd written that 3 years and what felt like a lifetime ago. Now I added a new entry. I saved myself, and now I'm helping save others. If I was given this second chance for a reason, I think this might be it. Not just my own survival, but creating a path for others to survive too. Maya came back into my life briefly. She apologized. I didn't forgive her, but I didn't need to. She's living her life and I'm living mine. Maybe she'll break the cycle for her daughter. I hope she does. Not for her sake, but for that little girl's. Mom is somewhere, doing whatever she does. I don't know and I don't care. The restraining order stands. My life is better without her in it. The foundation is thriving. My books are helping people. I have a family, a real family, in Dad and the community I've built. I don't think about the old timeline much anymore. That Nora died at 23, broken and alone. This Nora is 33, whole, and surrounded by people who actually love her. If I could go back and tell my 20-year-old self one thing, it would be this. You are not crazy. You are not worthless. You are not the problem. And you are so much stronger than you know. The revenge was satisfying, yes. Watching them fall was cathartic. But the real victory was building a life they couldn't touch. A life where their opinions don't matter, where their abuse has no power, where I'm free. This is what winning actually looks like. Not them in ruins, but me in bloom. I closed the journal and put it back on the shelf, next to my published novels and my memoir. Outside my window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My garden was in full bloom, roses and lavender and daisies I'd planted myself. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from a reader. Thank you for your book. I left today. I took my kids and I left. I'm scared, but I'm free. Thank you for showing me it was possible. I typed back. You're brave, you're strong, you're going to be okay. The foundation has resources if you need help. You're not alone. Because that was the truth I'd learned, the lesson my rebirth had taught me. You can't control your family. You can't make them love you right. You can't force them to see your worth, but you can save yourself. You can document the abuse, gather your evidence, and build your case. You can leave. You can heal. You can transform your pain into purpose. You can create the life you deserve, and you can help others do the same. That's what victory really looks like. Not watching your enemies burn, but building something so beautiful they can't touch it. Not revenge, but freedom. Not destruction, but creation. I'd let Maya use my car for her road trip. I'd already bought my own, and I'd used it to drive away from everything that had hurt me and toward everything that would heal me. That car, my real car, my secret car, hadn't just been transportation. It had been a metaphor for independence, for preparation, for the future I was building while they thought I was still under their control. They'd seen me as weak, as controllable, as someone who would always be their victim. They'd never seen me planning, saving, preparing, growing. They'd never suspected that while they were busy stealing from me, I was busy building an empire they couldn't reach. By the time they realized I'd escaped, I was already too far ahead for them to catch. And now I was using that head start to pull others forward too. That was the real revenge. Not their suffering, but my thriving. Not their ruin, but my success. Not their pain, but my purpose. I'd died once, in another life, destroyed by people who should have loved me. I'd been reborn, been given a second chance, and I'd used it wisely. I'd saved myself. And now I was saving others. That was enough. That was everything. That was winning. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Tomorrow I'd wake up in my own house, in my own life, in my own hard-won freedom. And that, more than any revenge, was the greatest victory of all. Epilogue: 5 years later, the Evelyn Chen Foundation now operated 12 shelters across the country. We'd helped over 3,000 young people escape financial abuse. My memoir had been translated into 30 languages. The Netflix adaptation of my novel had won 3 Emmys. I was 38 years old, successful, happy, free. I stood in my father's garden. He'd moved in with me the previous year after a minor health scare, and neither of us had regretted it, watching him teach a group of foster kids how to plant tomatoes. He volunteered with the local youth center now, giving kids the kind of stable, loving presence he'd never gotten to give me. Ms. Chen, one of the shelter staff, approached me. "There's someone here to see you. She says it's important." I followed her inside, expecting a donor or maybe a journalist. Instead, I found Maya. She looked different again. Older, yes, but also more solid somehow. Less performance, more substance. A little girl, her daughter, now 7, stood beside her, holding her hand. I know I'm not supposed to be here, Maya said immediately. And I'll leave right after this, but I wanted you to meet Elena, and I wanted to donate. She held out an envelope. Maya, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Her voice was firm. I've been working, real work, not influencer bullshit. I'm a bookkeeper now, if you can believe it. And I've been saving. This is $20,000. It's not enough to make up for what I took from you, but it's a start. I want it to go to the foundation, to help kids who had families like we did. I took the envelope, stunned. And I wanted Elena to meet you, not because I'm trying to reconnect or make you forgive me, but because she asked about you. She saw your book on my shelf, saw the author photo, and asked who you were, and I told her the truth. I told her you were my sister, and I was terrible to you, and you saved yourself, and now you help other people save themselves. She wanted to meet you. The little girl looked up at me with Maya's eyes and said, very seriously, "Are you really a hero?" I crouched down to her level. No, sweetie. I'm just someone who decided to be brave when I was scared. Anyone can do that. Mommy says you're the bravest person she knows. I glanced at Maya, who had tears in her eyes. Your mommy is pretty brave too, I said to Elena. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong and try to be better. Elena nodded solemnly. She says you taught her that. Maya spoke softly. I know we'll never be sisters. Not really. But I wanted you to know that what you did, fighting back, building all this, it mattered. It changed my life, maybe saved it, and definitely saved hers. She squeezed her daughter's hand. Come on, baby, we need to go. Ms. Chen has important work to do. Wait, I said when... Maya. She turned back. Thank you for the donation and for breaking the cycle. Thank you, she said, for surviving, for showing me it was possible. They left. I stood there holding the envelope, processing what had just happened. My father appeared in the doorway. You okay? Yeah, I said, I think I am. That was big of her, coming here. It was. You going to accept the donation? Of course. The foundation helps anyone who needs it, regardless of who they're related to. He smiled. That's my girl. That evening, I deposited the check. $20,000 from Maya. $20,000 that would help fund therapy sessions, legal consultations, emergency housing, and fresh starts for people fleeing financial abuse. It didn't erase what she'd done. It didn't make us family, but it was something, an acknowledgement, an apology in action. And most importantly, it was proof that people could change. Not everyone would, not everyone wanted to, but some people, when confronted with the truth of what they'd done, actually chose to be better. That gave me hope. Not for Maya and me, that bridge was permanently burned, and I was okay with that. But hope for her daughter, for all the children growing up in toxic families, that they might see a different way. That's what my second life had taught me in the end. You can't save everyone. You can't fix every broken family. You can't make everyone understand what they've done. But you can save yourself. You can build something good from your pain, and you can light a path for others to follow. I'd been given a gift, the gift of foreknowledge, of a second chance, of the ability to rewrite my story. I'd used it to escape, to heal, and to help. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the real story, not the revenge, though that had been satisfying, not the victory, though that had been necessary, but the life I'd built afterward, the freedom, the purpose, the peace. I'd let them use my car for her road trip. I'd already bought my own, and I'd driven it straight into the future I deserved, a future they couldn't touch, couldn't taint, couldn't take away. That was the real revenge. Living well. That was the real victory. Being free. That was the real story. Surviving, thriving, and helping others do the same. And as I stood in my home, surrounded by the life I'd built from the ashes of my first one, I finally understood what my rebirth had been for, not just to save myself, but to prove it was possible, to show everyone trapped in toxic families that escape was real, that healing was achievable, that you could take your worst experiences and transform them into your greatest purpose. I'd died at 23 in my first life, destroyed by people who should have loved me. I'd been reborn at 20, armed with knowledge and determination. And I'd built an empire of hope on the foundation of my pain. That was my story, and I was still writing it, one survivor at a time, one shelter at a time, one second chance at a time. The end.